episode of Islanders Reveal All is sponsored by Arran Online, the website and app that puts the island in everyone's pocket. Here you'll find every trade and service, and visitors can book accommodation, restaurants, and discover things to see and do. It's completely free to download and use, and local businesses can list themselves free of charge. Today on Islanders Reveal All, I'm joined by Tim Pomeroy, sculptor and artist, and Josephine Broekhuizen, artist and founding member of the Arran Open Art Studios. Tim and Josephine settled on Arran because of its diverse range of material and the spectacular scenery, but more about that later. They've spent time in Aberdeen, Lanarkshire, London, and Josephine's native Rotterdam. But I think it's fair to say that their hearts are now firmly here on Arran. Tim and Josephine have also had several career changes, but creating art that inspires has always been their passion. On Islanders Reveal All, we'll be finding out more about Tim and Josephine and what makes them tick. So, welcome Tim and Josephine. Can I start with you, Josephine, if I may? I'm interested to know a little bit more about your career so far and your vocation really for art, because I know it wasn't your first career choice, and I know that you've had quite a few interesting jobs over the years before you kind of made your way back to art. So can you tell me a little bit more about those?
Yes, well, I really started out wanting to be a vet, and so I did go to university in Belgium to become a vet, but very quickly found that it wasn't really what I thought it would be. It was very lonely because I decided to go live in just a room rather than a flat, student flat.
Yeah.
So that didn't really work out. And then I started a job at the tax-free
in
shop
Schiphol.
Schiphol, yes.
But can I just ask you about the veterinary thing? Because that's quite an interesting choice. Did you always love animals?
Yes.
What was your thinking behind that? Because quite a definite career, that.
Yes, I did love animals, and I always had animals like guinea pigs and anything really.
Right.
And where we lived, not far from it, was a pet shop. So any spare time was hanging out in the pet shop and buying pets like rabbits and pigeons.
Right, so that's where the love came from then.
Yes.
Perfect. And so then you go and work in the duty free. So a bit far. Well, some people might think there's lots of animals in the airport, but I'm not sure. You can put me right on that.
No, not. They were all people, but it was very interesting because every nation had a different kind of characteristics. Like the British were always very polite and very chatty.
Right.
And the German, because there were a lot of businessmen, the German businessmen never said anything.
Okay.
And the Japanese always wanted to buy the most expensive whiskey that was available.
Really?
And you could hear the Americans coming from a mile away.
But it feels to me like then you kind of moved more towards your art. But I don't think that's where it really started from. I think,
No.
Am I right in thinking that actually from quite a young age, art was something that you found a lot of peace and inspiration from?
I really loved drawing, and teachers always said, "Oh, you're so talented," but I never really thought very much about it. I loved doing it. And then, in primary school, I think art is always part of whatever you're doing. But at secondary school, I did love doing it, but you couldn't choose it as a subject.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the school that I went to was really geared towards academia.
Okay.
And I suppose I wasn't really an academic.
Yeah.
I was more a hands-on kind of person. And I think that's where the veterinary came into it as well. It was something hands-on.
Yeah.
But I hadn't counted on the first year at the university, apart from being lonely. Also, all we did was doing physics, chemistry.
Oh, right.
No animals in sight, apart from the fellow students.
But amazing subjects for being veterinary, though. So.
Yeah.
So you go from what kind of was the point that, you know, you're working in the duty-free shop and you're thinking, I'm going to go, that's quite a huge leap to say I'm going to go to art college and study.
Yeah, well, I suppose I sort of took stock and thought, what am I really good at? What else can I do? And yeah, art was always something, it was in the family as well, and it was something that I was good at. And so I decided to go to do a school which was a free academy. Okay. So you didn't need to do any exams, you could just go there and study art. It was quite a sort of visionary thing to have. It's not there anymore, but there I was greatly encouraged by the teachers there, and they said, oh, you're really talented. And so I tried to put a portfolio together.
Okay.
But nobody really gave me any ideas really how to do that. So I did lots of life drawing, and I had stacks and stacks of life drawing, but nothing else. It didn't really show off my talents to the best, you know, what the art school would be looking for. But at the same time, really, because I like making things and doing things, I started making some dolls, and I just went to flea markets and picked up old clothes and sort of made sort of vintage looking dolls.
Okay.
Yes. And
so quite different to life drawing then.
Very different, yes.
Yeah. And did that play a part in you going to art college?
Well, I took them along just really as a kind of afterthought, because I had all these life drawings, but I didn't have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, art schools are kind of looking for a kind of diversity of things. You know, what else can you do apart from life drawing, which is very good. But
yeah. So then, and I brought them, and that really got me into art school, because the man that was interviewing me was really, really intrigued by that I'd made them. I made everything about them myself, the faces and the hair, and I had been actually thinking back, being very creative about what materials to use, because, for instance, the hair, you had joke shops, and they sold fake breast hair for, you know, like this curly stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and it came plaited, and I thought that's ideal for doll's hair, so I used that.
Well, I've never seen that, but that sounds great. I think there's a business opportunity here on our own. And is it something you've continued to do over the years, to make those dolls, or was that just
no? Because then once I was accepted at the art school, that is a full-time sort of education thing,
and you didn't just study though. Was it in Belgium? Yeah, because you also came to Scotland.
Yes.
And did part of your study here in art.
Yes.
So I believe at Gray's in Aberdeen.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because that must have been such a huge change for you to do that. And also, you know, the language and the culture could have been something to really get over as well.
Yes. Well, in fourth year, of the art school in Rotterdam, my then boyfriend decided we would get married, and his first job, being an engineer, was in Aberdeen. And so I came along, but I wanted to finish my studies. So I found out there was an art school in Aberdeen.
Did you not originally think you could commute to Glasgow? She originally thought she could commute to Glasgow School of Art every day.
Not knowing anything about Scotland. I hadn't quite clocked the distance.
There's not many roads, really, are there?
No. So there was an art school in Aberdeen, and they accepted me, and they said, yes, you can finish it here, but you have to do an extra year because you had to write a dissertation, and my language really wasn't really enough. And yes, you're right. It was very isolating, really, not being able to pick up what people were saying in the background. And so I made that really part of, I tried my very best to pick up the language and be able to speak it. And yes, and it was isolating. And
And no better place really to learn a language than in the country, because you have to learn it almost.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
But there's one thing that I thought was a great thing you said to me when we were chatting earlier, which was that you can make art in spite of yourself.
Yes.
And I kind of wondered a little bit more whether that was to do with the fact that you'd moved to a different country to continue study.
Yes. The art really comes from quite a different place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
And transcends languages, I suppose.
Yes, and it's always there. And yeah, it's a different language, because I suppose I made a lot of friends, and I met Tim there as well. So the art helped in that sense. And
a universal language, isn't it, that transcends verbal language?
Yeah.
So even though we could talk to one another because your English was really excellent. Yeah. You're communicating ideas on a kind of subliminal level.
And I think I'm somebody who really needs to communicate. So I was kind of desperate. So yes, art was a great help in that sense.
That's amazing. And I completely get what you're saying in terms of it being on a completely different level. I think, in business where we talk about transferable skills, and it doesn't really matter if you're good at, if you work in a different industry sector or whatever, it's the skills can be the same. But I think for something like art, again, the language isn't really a barrier. And I think that's really what we're saying here, which is amazing.
Yes. And there are cultural differences. Well, I found that even though it's a Western country, the cultural differences are there, and I was struggling with that. But in the end, it worked.
Yes.
I think if I hadn't been forced to move, I would never have left anywhere. I'm not really a globetrotter kind of person.
Wow.
So I'm grateful for that.
You do seem quite well travelled to me, though, I have to say. Makes me feel like I haven't been anywhere. But Tim, can I just ask you, because you've not had a straightforward sort of line into art. You originally, I think, were at Glasgow University, and was doing something quite different.
Yeah, I think definitely not a straight line to the arts for me, and it's partly to do with a kind of expectation of that I should go into be an academic, which I'm not. I agree with Josephine. I'm not at all an academic. But having said that, I did go to university and did Latin, Greek, Anglo-Saxon.
That does sound fairly academic to me, actually, if you don't mind me saying.
In reflection, yes, it did. But that's probably why it didn't work.
Right.
I mean, all I can remember bits and pieces of Latin. I can remember Sweet's Anglo-Saxon primer. I can remember Smout's book on Scottish history. But I can remember better the snooker room and the debating chamber in the men's union. That's very clear, because I spent an awful lot of time in the men's union really wondering where, because I went to university far too young, so I was just turned 17, was completely unprepared for it.
Yes.
So yeah, it was not for me, effectively.
Do you mean from sort of an age perspective? Because there's quite a big age difference between going at 17 and going at sort of 18, 19, where
absolutely,
when you're younger, I think a year or two can make a huge difference. Totally, what you're ready for in your development.
Yeah, and I absolutely wasn't ready for it at all. I mean, I wasn't your kind of classic dropout. I wasn't, smoking pot and outside the lecture theatre. Yeah, no, I know, it's so boring. I know.
I thought this was going to be an interesting interview. You were going to tell me all sorts.
The kiss and tell might come later. No. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Grosvenor Cafe in Byers Road smoking cigarettes and writing pretty dreadful poetry. I remember that. And I spent a lot of time in the chapel crying a lot. I remember that. But I did go to my lectures, yeah.
And was the poetry in Greek or Latin?
No.
Was the debate society in Greek or Latin?
No.
Was the snooker?
Not in Greek. No, none of it, I'm afraid.
So not really a lot of use then?
No, it was all terribly heartrending confessional rubbish, actually. None of it in Greek or Latin.
But then you left university and obviously didn't decide to pursue a career in Greek or Latin.
Absolutely.
So what happened next?
Right, then, so I stayed the year and then left. I had no idea what to do. I was kind of badly advised not badly advised. I simply wasn't advised. I felt kind of kind of amplifying what Josephine, very isolated and alone.
Okay.
I was very interested in singing and folk music, so I was playing in a folk club. I think it would be East Kilbride Folk Club or Blantyre Folk Club, and there was a guy on the bill. I was kind of like warming up, and he was the kind of head act. At the end, we got chatting, and he said, "I'm leaving a job tomorrow, literally tomorrow, in a Glasgow Corporation children's home. Why don't you apply for it?"
Goodness.
So I thought I had nothing else on that day, so I did, and to my astonishment, got a job at just what age was that? About 18, as a house father in a children's home.
And it wasn't to do with Greek or Latin?
Nothing at all.
Well, just to show how well qualified you had to be. My goodness.
I know.
And what were the age of these children then? Because
yeah, it was. There were 3 separate families of about 14 children each. The age range within each family was from about 1-year-old to 15.
wow.
And I, as the house father, had my opposite number, who was the house mother.
Yeah.
And together we made this kind of family unit. So we had to kind of go through the motions of dealing with our 14 children as a family unit and caring for them and nurturing them, changing their nappies, helping with their French homework, feeding them, folding, washing. Just imagine any family unit. And that was, that was the job.
That's incredible. Yeah. And you must have drawn on sort of your own upbringing to suddenly find yourself technically as a parent.
Technically, yeah, absolutely.
At such a young age. I mean, what did you draw on personally?
I think my own upbringing brought out the conciliator in me. So I was always somebody who was standing between parties and trying to reconcile. Was it ACAS, the old organization? Would have been a great somebody to work for ACAS or the diplomatic corps, I think. But actually, so I ended up those skills that I had as a kind of conciliator seemed to work. Between child and child, between older child and younger child, between people having fights. So I found myself in the middle, and actually quite good at it.
At the fighting or the...
No, not at the fighting.
Just checking. Now, if you'd gone in the diplomatic corps, the Latin and Greek might have helped
that
there,
would have
actually.
done, yeah.
And the fact that you've also mentioned you were teaching French and helping with these French homework, I'm really impressed, actually.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. Is this where the love of music came from?
The folk singing I had been doing before the children's home. I'd been doing that for about 6 months.
Okay.
Looking to make some sort of living, but it was hand to mouth. It was ridiculous. And during that time was the only time in my entire life that I ever signed on the brew, which in English means being unemployment benefit.
On the dole.
On the dole, yeah. And I was on the dole for about, I think, 2 months, as I remember, maybe 2.5 months, 3 months, but no more than that. Living at home, mercifully, so I had my mother and father were kind of feeding me and looking after me, I suppose. I was looking for some sort of direction. The folk singing happened. It wasn't going to be the lifeboat that I really needed. Then the children's home came in, and that was a proper paid job. I was in effectively social work without having studied anything. But during the year that I was in the children's home, I started seeing some of the things that are only kind of coming out in the news these days. So unpleasant things, actually. So
I don't think we should go there.
No, we'll not go there. No, we'll not go there. But effectively, the message that came out of that kind of experience was, I've got to get out of this. I've got to find something else. At that time, I met my friend, who's also an artist, called Jack Sloan. And he said, why don't you try for art school?
Okay.
And I had thought in this kind of lovely Oscar Wildean way that there's no way I could, or that our artists were kind of people with long black cloaks that hung over balconies ecstasizing about roses. I knew nothing about art because I didn't take art at secondary school. Anyway, I did my higher art at night school while I was the house father in the children's home.
Amazing.
Motorbiking in and out to Glasgow every day from Hamilton. So I got my higher art and then applied for art school, and to cut a long story short, got into Grays. And it was it wasn't easy. There was a point where I had been rejected from Glasgow School of Art, which was my first choice. I'd been rejected from Edinburgh School of Art, which was my second choice. at that point, and those letters came in over a series of 3 days. And at that point, I thought, this is all going the way of the university.
Yeah.
And I jumped on my bike in Hamilton and cycled to Troon. And if there had been a fishing boat in Troon, I was going to jump on it, blag a job, and I would have become a fisherman if they'd taken me, and I would have kicked the rest of it into touch. That was the plan. I cycled all the way to Troon on a blisteringly hot summer's day and got to Troon, and again, mercifully, the harbour was completely empty. There was no fishing boats to be seen. So disconsolate, I sort of turned around and cycled back. And
Did nobody mention you need to be there at like 4 a.m?
Nobody mentioned anything. It was just, I know. Where are all these advisors when you need them? But I got back red with sunburn the following morning. Literally the following morning, the letter came in from Grace saying that I'd been accepted. And it I don't know, maybe everybody's career and life is as dovetailed as mine has been at certain positions. It's just, you're only kind of forced to reflect on it when, in this sort of situation where you think about it.
Absolutely.
You know, oftentimes we just sort of sit and it just drifts in and out.
And actually, you both met at Gray's.
We did.
So how did that come about? I mean, because presumably, were you both teachers there, or were you both studying there?
I was studying there, and my teacher my lecturer, I think.
Lecturer, yeah.
He went on a sabbatical.
Okay.
And I didn't know Jim, obviously.
No.
He got the lucky chance to be a lecturer.
Yeah, and I was teaching down in Girvan Academy, and on day 19 of my secondary school teaching career, I got a letter from Gray's School of Art saying, "Would you like to be a lecturer?" And it was like winning the Miss World, or what I imagine
Mr. World.
the Mr. World competition was.
And so was it a real sort of meeting of the minds as far as art was concerned?
Yes. I suppose I was really looking for connecting with people, and you were younger than most of the teachers there.
Yeah.
But you were also very interested in art.
And quite inspired, I think,
yeah,
as well.
You were very inspired, and yeah, we did connect very much on that level. Yeah. We did kind of click.
We did.
And that to me is a real example of the not needing to have the kind of verbal communication, because actually the art spoke.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you were very inspired. You're a very good teacher as well. And, you know, I had to write this dissertation, and I found that really quite difficult to write in English.
Yeah.
So you offered to look over what I had written. I would find it difficult in Dutch as well.
Oh, yeah.
To write it in English, added extra stuff. And then, so I would bring what I'd written in, and then Tim would read it and fall off his chair laughing.
But you weren't writing it in Greek or Latin, were you?
No.
To just entertain him a little bit.
It was hilarious. And I think that Josephine's dissertation kind of was a real binding moment for us, because we were just in stitches for days and days and days reading about Willem de Kooning, the sort of American abstract expressionist painter.
So that was
it was hilarious.
Cool.
But you got through it, and it was great.
That's
really
incredible. I couldn't even begin to imagine writing an essay, let alone a dissertation, in a different language.
No.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah, well, yes. And also, there is such a language as art language, which, you know, you can read in books and it's almost incomprehensible.
International Art English, it's called, actually.
Really?
And it is utterly incomprehensible. It's a language. It was coined a few years back, and it refers to the kind of language that they talk in art journals and high-end critical journals of the arts. And if you haven't got the international art English, you're sunk.
Yes, it's quite intimidating.
Yeah,
in a way.
So you need all the lingo and the right language that they use. I get that. It's a bit like that in financial services and banking, I have to say. There's all sorts of terms that don't make any sense to anybody unless you're in there.
Yeah.
But Josephine, you use a number of processes in your work.
Yes.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the different processes you use, and actually, really, which one you like most? You like working with most?
Yes. So I paint, and I use oil paint, and I make prints. I make lino cuts, and I make screen prints, which is a different process again.
Okay.
And they all have their own advantages and disadvantages. So what I like about printing is that you never know what it's going to look like, so you can't really control it.
Yes.
You think you're going to make something, and for a start it's back to front, so you're stopped there, but actually that is very freeing.
Yes.
You don't have to think about it, really. You don't have to try and make it good, or you just have to kind of surrender to the process. And that is, I think, when art happens, more than when you're trying to really be in control of it.
And do you find that, because obviously for each of those types of things, I mean, obviously oil painting, you're going to be using oils, but for some of the other things, the products are quite different. I mean, do you get any inspiration from Aaron and your environment here?
Yes, well, yes, obviously. The art is kind of an expression of my experience of the world in, at large. But so Aaron has got beautiful sea views, and the colors are just very beautiful. And also I have my garden here. I worked for Lady Jean as a gardener for a while, and
Really? Wow.
that really inspired me to look closer at the plants, and so that inspired me to make sort of plant and flower paintings. And so it goes in and then it comes out, but how that works, I don't know.
And you mentioned your genes. Do you have kind of artists in your family?
Yes, my grandfather was a professional painter, and he lived in this artist colony outside Amsterdam.
Oh wow.
But his uncles were the Maris brothers, who are well known.
Yes.
But yes, it's been a kind of tradition to
my
be
goodness.
an artist.
No pressure for you then.
No.
And Tim, you started off as a painter as well, and then you moved over to becoming a sculptor. So, gosh, that's huge for somebody like me to imagine. Two very different disciplines, I would call them.
Yeah.
What was the change all about? How did that happen?
As a painter, I'd always made sculptures. In the book that's just recently been published, there's a photograph of me in my first studio in Coatbridge. And even then, I trained as a painter and I taught painting. So I was painting tutor to Josephine and 10 others.
Yes.
But I'd always dabbled's the wrong word. I'd always wanted to kind of see round the corner, as it were. So you look at a painting and it's flat, and sometimes you just want to see what's in behind something. And to do that, you can then make it and actually see what's in behind. So it's a kind of wanting to see that third dimension. So I was always making small sculptures as a wee extension of my drawing process, which is ongoing every day. And I worked as a painter primarily for about, I suppose, 15 years, from about 1981 to about 96. There was a point where the National Lottery came on, and all of a sudden there was a whole lot of money in society sloshing about for public artworks.
Yes.
At that point, I was approached by a firm of architects and asked if I would be interested in designing a kind of font for the back garden of some people call it the oldest house in Glasgow. It used to be called Provin's Lordship. It's now St Nicholas's Garden. No confusion there. It is the kind of Glasgow equivalent of the Chelsea Physic Garden, and I was commissioned to make a big font for the middle of that.
When you say big, I mean, how big are we talking? We say
a metre cubed.
Really?
Yeah, so a metre by a metre by a metre, so a big block of granite.
Wow.
And when the architects were interviewing me, they said, "Oh, have you worked in granite before?" And I said, "Yes, of course I have." What I'd actually done was I'd carved 2 lines in a sundial, 2 lines of text in a sundial, and I thought, I'll blag my way through this.
That's amazing. But you must have. Did you have the tools, or how did you? Because suddenly to have those,
I had some tools, but not tools that were going to affect a cubic metre of Scandinavian granite. No.
A quick trip down to Screwfix, then, was it?
Yeah, machine marked. Yeah, give me your So what happened was, I got the commission, and in the meantime, I had met this firm of stonemasons in St Andrews with whom I got on famously well. They're lovely, lovely people, particularly the now late owner, Bill Watson. We got on so well. Anyway, he said, you can come and make it in my yard in St Andrews. You can use our electricity, you can use all the tools, whatever you want. So I decamped there for about 4 months in the winter of 94 to 95, living in a caravan on the yard in St Andrews, and effectively learned how to become a stonemason in about 4 months. And it was punishing. There was an interesting phone call.
Especially in the winter.
Well, especially in the winter. Yeah. There was lots of stories.
I would have done it in the summer. I mean,
Princess Anne couldn't wait.
The royals are so demanding.
I know.
Tell me more.
Well, I wanted to tell you the story about the architect phoned up, right? So I'm working in this really busy, noisy yard with sort of 17 other stonemasons. I'm with this huge, great big block of granite that nobody wants to touch granite. We all want limestone and sandstone. Nobody wants to. But yeah, so the architect phoned up, and I was taking this call. It was, and all the machines were going, and people were bashing things, and huge, great 3-meter reciprocating saws were cutting blocks. And the architect shouted down the phone, I can hardly hear you. What's all that noise? I said, oh, that's the diamond saws cutting the stuff. He said, is that not cheating? I said, Gary, which year do you want this commission finished in?
Quite.
Granite is a very punishingly hard material.
Yeah.
But Princess Anne, when all this was done and dusted, and the whole thing came to fruition, my part of it was only a small part of this architect's whole scheme. I did the fountain in the middle. I did 12 panels of medical kind of illustrations in granite that are sitting in the paving in the garden. I did a couple of bronzes, one for the partially sighted, a braille piece, and another piece set in the paving. But the architects had contracted all sorts of builders and other to really redesign landscape gardeners. Yeah. So when it came for the unveiling, Princess Anne was just happened to be in Scotland, and she
didn't come specially then?
No.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
I think I would retell the story. She came specially.
Okay. She came specially to see me.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was a wonderful sunny day. I've got some lovely photographs of me as a young man and Princess Anne, chatting away about granite.
And was she interested at all in where you got the product from?
She was quite bruised because it came from Scandinavia, because at that time, I don't know what now, but at that time there was no native granite industry left in Scotland, having been one of the great leaders of granite production. I said, no, this came from Scandinavia, from Sweden. Why was that? Why, quite indignant. I said, well, no granite industry in Scotland. And then I said, quick, change the subject. Where did the granite from Balmoral come from? And she said, we have a quarry behind the house.
We have a quarry behind.
I thought, yes, Aberdeenshire.
One has a quarry behind the house.
One has a quarry.
I love it.
It was great.
Oh, that's great. And so you've both exhibited in various places, your work. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, where have you exhibited? Because I think you've done quite a few different places.
Yes. Well, once I finished art school, you have to think, how am I going to make some money? I'm an artist, so I have to go and do it. So, yes, the first thing I did, I phoned some of my old lecturers in the Dutch art school and said, how do you go about this? But I didn't really get any good answers. So I just thought I'd phone a gallery in Amsterdam. And so I phoned this famous gallery and said, oh yes, I'm an artist and I'm looking for a gallery. How about, can I make an appointment? And they were, less than friendly. And they said, you can't just phone us up and expect to get a...
Really?
Yes, we've got a stable of artists. And so I then looked about, and there was a coffee shop that I could show my work. And then there was a an old folks home and so on. And yeah, so from there I started looking for places to exhibit my work. But it didn't really pay the bills, so I had to look for something else to do as well. So I thought, where we stayed then in Lanarkshire, there weren't really any art classes for people. There wasn't any adult art classes or children's art classes. So I looked into that and started doing my own kind of art classes. I would organize in the halls. You know, you have village halls.
Yes.
And that was very successful. While I was doing that, the council started to employ an arts development officer.
Yes.
Previously, there hadn't been anything like that. So he got in touch with me, looking at what I was doing, and then I started to work for the council, really. And they would...
But that kind of characterises Josephine in a way. It was one of the kind of attractive qualities is that Josephine wasn't waiting for anybody. She just went and started her art classes. And in fact, that's also happened when you did the Aaron Open Studios.
Yes.
Which is kind of...
Which much later on in my career.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Because I know that it's something you're really passionate about, and it happens every August here on Aaron.
Yes.
So tell us more.
Well, it's about exposure as an artist. You have to be able to show your work to the public because, you know, it's a two-way thing. But the council did have these open studios, but it just would take so long, and I suppose it's bureaucracy. It never was going to happen for Aaron, seemingly. So I thought, well, I'll do it myself and, you know, make this a possibility for artists to show their work at least once a year. It's possibly we could do it without money from the council and find sponsors by going to the businesses on Aaron, asking them to sponsor this, and that's how it happened. It just made it happen.
Yeah. And that's a really admirable quality, and not one that a lot of people might think artists would have, because you're so immersed in your world of creating your art that often people might think that's not a natural characteristic.
I think partly it's to do with being Dutch, who have the reputation of being pragmatic. But also I think my background, the way I was brought up was that you just had to do things yourself because nobody else was doing it. So it kind of, it wasn't very good, but it also facilitated me to do anything I wanted, like sawing, hammering, drilling, electrics, you name it.
Nothing phases you.
No, not really.
No. I love that.
And also that there's the kind of amplify that kind of pragmatic thing. If you're sitting waiting for a gallery to discover you, you could wait there
forever,
for an awful long time and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of artists that we know, you know, they're sort of sitting around waiting to be discovered, and there are so many artists. You've kind of got to push yourself forward, and
or too frightened to be discovered. Maybe
absolutely.
That, you know, there's an innate insecurity in having given something so personal of yourself to create a piece of art that it must be very hard if somebody doesn't love it or see in it what you see in it.
It can be you're very vulnerable when you're throwing your life into something.
I remember
as you
that
say, it's quite hurtful
from my final show at the Aberdeen Arts School, that I hung it all up. I'd made it all hung up and then had a look and realised, oh no, it's all about me.
I know you've exhibited in a few places as well, Tim, and I think there was a fairly famous expedition to London, shall we call it, during the pandemic.
Recently, during the pandemic, it was nearly an expedition that didn't happen to London, actually. I'd been working through from about late summer 2019 to early sort of through the winter anyway, with the idea that I was going to be showing 2020 in April in Mayfair, in this gallery in Mayfair. I was working like a Trojan to the point where I thought I was going to collapse from exhaustion. that's not, it's just how I work. I enjoy it, actually. But, so the exhibition was scheduled to start mid-April, and I got myself all keyed up. But then obviously the pandemic hit, and I went, yeah, great, Yahoo. Yahoo. So, and it was postponed until September, October, I think they'd said originally. So I had 6 weeks off doing gardening stuff and building things about the house and just easy things, what I call easy things. Then the gallery brought the exhibition forward again because Boris had announced that the first relaxation of lockdown was going to be around about the beginning of July.
Yes.
So suddenly it was all in again, and I was tense again. So I thought, I've got to get myself prepared. So I went down to a ferry operator of both our Kens to buy some tickets.
Begin with C.
Yeah. But they wouldn't sell me any tickets, so I wasn't deemed to be what did they call it? Essential service.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did argue that with several people that this was my livelihood. It was no different from somebody else taking sheep to market or wood to the sawmill.
Yep.
I did argue that if I lived in Ardrossan, I wouldn't have to actually ask permission to go off the island and so on. So anyway, it all turned out well in the end, and actually enjoyed a really good exhibition down in London during sort of July 1st to October 1st, 2020.
Well, you say you enjoyed a good exhibition, but I don't think it was that well attended, was it?
It wasn't that well attended. I would expect about 100 people to 130 people in a private view, but as we all know, there was no such things as private views. The gallery said, it will be fine. The first relaxation of lockdown, it will be fine.
Everybody's bored.
Everybody's bored, they're stuck at home, they'll be beating a path to the door. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 days of openings, and we've got crates of champagne, and anybody who comes in the door gets a glass of champagne.
Well, that's a reason to go, isn't it?
Absolutely. I would have gone. Well, I was there already. So anyway, with 3 days, I think I had 3 people in 3 days. It was excruciating.
So you drank a lot of champagne?
I drank a lot of champagne, which is quite good. And at one point I said, why don't we make some films for the website? And I'll just talk about the artworks. Just a wee bit of background, how they came about, what they mean to me, how they physically happened, how long they took, and so on and so on. So we did that with one of the girls from the gallery, literally done on our iPhone, and there was about 6 or 8, can't remember, wee short films that went onto the website, and that's where we sold the sculptures from.
My goodness. Now I'd like to get a little bit personal with you two, if you don't mind. Obviously you met at Gray's in Aberdeen. But I think there was a little bit of a sort of a Love Actually moment when you met.
Well, as I said earlier on, we were talking a lot and about art and my then husband also worked offshore, so I had a lot of time where there wasn't really anybody else around, and we would go for walks and we're very good friends, and that was really helpful for me being quite isolated. But then the time came that we had to move away, and we moved to London. And I suppose that's when I realized that Tim actually meant a lot to me, and that, I suppose, if there was a love actually moment, it was then. It was that.
It was more of a kind of Dr. Zhivago moment, wasn't it?
Yes, well, no, this is true. I remember walking around in Richmond, and there was a second-hand bookshop, and Tim had said he loved Dr. Zhivago, and I saw this book, and I thought, oh, I'll go and read it. And I don't know if you know the story at all, but the hero decides to follow his heart rather than his head, and marries or gets involved with his love of his life. And I thought, after reading that, I thought, yeah, you only live once. What are you going to do? Are you going to, be miserable for the rest of your life and do the right thing, or are you going to pursue the person that you really truly love. So yeah, thanks to Dr. Survival.
True romantic.
But that's lovely, and actually it shows how much of an impression you had made on each other then in that way. But that's what I mean by a Love Actually moment, because it was almost, you hadn't really realised it wasn't an intention.
No, it wasn't.
But actually that was the reality of it, and that's lovely. And to realise that.
Yes. And it wasn't easy because, you know, I was in a foreign country.
Of course, yeah.
And I was married, and so it happened in the end.
So shall we just fast forward just slightly here, because I'm really interested to know. So you then set up home in, I think you described it as a shack in Lanarkshire. So tell me a bit more about that, and some of the skills and things you had to do to sort of make this a home, your first home together, really.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I had as a result of being a lecturer, I had earned quite a lot of money, and because I didn't really do very much, I managed to save up enough a lot of money, so virtually managed to buy the shack outright almost.
Wow.
But when I say it's a shack, that is maybe a bit misconstruing, because it's a stone-built building, an old blacksmith's dwelling house and smiddy conjoined, and on about half an acre of ground. It was absolutely gorgeous. There was no floors, there were no windows, there was a huge great hole in the roof, there was no electricity, there was a standpipe which came up literally out of the soil on the inside of the building. That was it. And I had moved there myself because when Josephine went to London, because I mean, what's I think was significant about the way we got to know one another was that we would go, as Josephine quite rightly said, we would go for these long walks and intense discussions. Quite intense discussions, but there was never any affair as such.
No.
So in a sense that was quite good, because we just got to know one another as buddies, really.
Yeah.
And then when Josephine went to London, we kind of decided that was it, really. And you were going to take your life, and I was going to take my life, and that was it. So I then went and bought this house about 6 months, maybe 10 months afterwards or something, and started living in it by myself. Effectively, I was going to do it up, and the smiddy was going to become my studio. The dwelling house was kind of big enough for one person. And then at one point I got a phone call from Josephine saying, I've left my husband, I've tried to go back to my parents, they won't take me in, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, come over and stay here, why don't you?
Yeah.
I've got this des res.
Was there ever a
wall-to-wall soil?
A moment of coming crashing down to reality?
No,
strangely enough.
No, I suppose I loved it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very hard.
Very hard, yeah.
In the sense that, yes, there was no floor, and it was really cold there, but yeah, it didn't really matter because we were free, and
yes,
and
you could create something together.
Yes,
a home together, which actually is quite an amazing thing to do.
And we were defining
all
it
these
as it went along.
Skills that we had came to good use.
Yeah, all these skills. Yeah.
And while you were in Lanarkshire, I know that you had quite an interesting time at Lee Castle.
Yes.
And a few commissions there. A particularly famous one, I think, of a hunting scene of Bannockburn.
Yes.
Quite a large one. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, well, just a little bit of information. The Lee Castle had been bought by some Americans.
Okay.
And when you bought the castle, I think it's still the same, you become a baron, which was really what they loved.
So you get the title as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you sell
that
it,
was the draw.
Yeah, when you sell it, you have to give it up again. But
okay.
Yes, and they bought it and started doing it up, and they needed a domestic cleaning lady. So I applied for that, but once they found out that I was an artist, they thought they had much better employ for me, and so I was asked to do a hunting scene in Victorian style.
Okay.
And I'm not very good at sizes, but it was quite large, and it was going to go in the study, which was basically covered the whole wall.
Yeah.
So I did some research as to what kind of things you had in in a hunting scene.
You're looking a lot at Landseer
Yes.
and
I think horses and
Horses, yes.
trees.
Yes.
dead stags,
Yeah,
Yeah.
rabbits,
Yeah.
A few weapons.
a few weapons, much
So
kilt.
I thought it was a great opportunity to do something that I would otherwise never
absolutely.
have done. So, and so I used all sorts of things like the plastic toys of our children or child, and like a wee pony,
Yeah.
and then turn it into a Highland pony,
Right,
or
okay.
pick up some dead rabbit from the road,
Yeah.
use it.
Roadkill, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I started with this commission, and then the lady wanted to see halfway through how it was progressing. So she came, and immediately she noticed that the Baron, who was quite short and dumpy, wasn't really the tallest thing in the painting.
Oh dear.
So I had to change that around.
A bit of creative license there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it had to be kind of like a pyramid. So he was the top of the pyramid, and then his son, and so on.
But in reality, his son was taller than him, so
Yes.
Josephine had just kind of made him his natural size.
Yeah, and yes, and then Tim featured features. I suppose it's still there. Features as one of the gillies, and his friend as one of the other
Yeah,
gillies.
we dressed up and posed.
That's incredible. I love that.
Tartan trews and
Yes.
blackberries and shepherd's crooks and muskets.
Yes,
That's
it was
brilliant.
great fun.
Yeah.
And there was also another piece that I think you had to do there, which involved some quite famous American presidents.
Yes, that's right. And these were bas relief kind of roundels. Bas relief means that nothing is higher than an inch.
Okay.
So you model it so that it looks like you've got depth, but it isn't really very deep.
Like a coin, really.
Like a coin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the lady Patricia had a collection of coins with all the American presidents.
Wow.
And that was what I had to model these roundels on. So she would give me a coin, and I would go home and do it, and then the next one and the next one. And I think it was Jefferson. I was working on Jefferson, and I'd finished it, and the time came I had to bring this back, and I couldn't find the coin anywhere.
Oh dear.
And we looked. So I thought, what am I going to do? This is probably worth
hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, because the Baron was incredibly rich.
Yeah,
so
he was.
This collection, we thought,
So Tim said, why don't we phone the Mint?
I phoned the Mint in America
And,
from this hovel in in
and
Lancashire.
they were being very American. They said, there's no problem. We'll send you one. It's $2.50 or something.
$2.50.
It was, yeah.
So, that was a great relief. So I put that coin back and never mentioned it.
And they never knew.
And they never knew.
That's brilliant. I love that. And can I just pick up on something actually for you, Tim? There's a great story in your book, and I've loved this book. I have to say it's one of my favourites.
Thank you.
And it's really about a story when you were in Norfolk, or for a client in Norfolk actually, in terms of where you get your inspiration from. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Because I was really amazed that would be.
Well, I think I was possibly as surprised as you might have felt when you read about it.
I did.
Yeah, we were invited down by this client to his Georgian farmhouse in Norfolk near Walsingham, and he had said he wanted a big sculpture for his garden. At that point, we didn't know what sort of size. Anyway, we were invited down to look at the potential locations within the huge grounds that he has there. So we walked around the garden and we looked at trees and locations and stuff. And then we came back into the big house and his nibs went off to make some tea in the kitchen. And we found ourselves in the drawing room, it was a drawing room, I think. And I was looking out of the windows, the two windows, at the two favoured locations outside. And I found myself standing in the middle of the room doing this. And then I turned around for no apparent reason. It was as if I was conducting a miniature orchestra. with one finger. I thought, why would you? I kept doing it. Anyway, he came back with the tea, and that was that. That kind of, it sort of stayed in my mind. We had tea, we chatted, we talked about funding, blah, blah, blah. Came back up to Scotland, and I sort of started generating ideas. So I opened my sketchbook, and I just started doing this with my pen and pencil. And the first 2 or 3 pages, they looked like sort of leaf springs from cars, and then they developed into wheat sheaves, and then they developed into boats, and then they developed into all sorts of other things. And I thought, what, as my mum would have put it, what in the name of God, are you doing? I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. But I thought, that's the thing. I suppose you learn as an artist to trust and to follow your idea. You trust in here, I think. And that's what I was doing. So I was drawing. And then I sort of started, these boat forms started to kind of, and I started to look for a logic in it. Why in the name of heavens am I? So I researched the Vikings, the effect, the influence of the Vikings in Norfolk.
Yeah,
of course, there was.
huge, yeah.
The influence of reed boats in Norfolk, because reeds are all, and yes, there was. And also, so suddenly I felt I'd sort of tapped into something that perhaps might be relevant to the place. So I did this, I was doing these drawings. Then at one point I did this drawing which straddled 2 pages of my sketchbook, and it took my breath away.
Looks a bit like this one then.
That's exactly it.
That's the one, isn't it?
Took my breath, and I thought, I never doubted it for a minute. I said, that's it. I've no idea what it's about, but that's it. And there was a kind of sense of, and breathe. There was a sort of sense of, and then, and I was excited and really, really inspired. And about 2 days later, I got an email in from the client saying, because he'd given me free rein to do whatever I wanted to do, and he said, I know I've said, you can just do what you want to do, but if there's any way you can maybe incorporate some sort of emotion from this poem that I'm saying, I want this sculpture as a memory of a very good friend of mine. And he sent me this poem, and it starts out with "push the boat out to sea," and it's about, I believe it's about Dante and Virgil.
That's where it came
crossing.
from.
So it's about a boat.
Yeah.
So at that point, the hairs at the back of my neck started to stand up, because I realised that some other agency, or I felt, I'm sure it's a lot of rubbish, but I felt as if some other agency had been kind of conducting this idea to the point. So that then I sent him this drawing.
And then the real thing is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The photograph in here is amazing.
Yeah. So the real thing was way too big to get the stone onto Aaron. In fact, the best, because I talked to Aaron Hollage at the time about it, and the best that they could offer was that this 14-foot by 3-foot by 3-foot block of marble would come in on a low loader, and they would put a forklift truck under either side of it and lift it off the lorry, and then they would drive the lorry away, and then they would put it down in the ground for me.
Wow.
So I had this image of having to actually carve this in Aaron Hollage's yard, and I thought, no, I couldn't do that. I'm sure they're lovely, but I couldn't do that. I need that kind of privacy, or there's a kind of thing where you have to inhabit your own head space, your own physical space, and become immersed in the idea. Allow the idea to take one as much as one possesses the idea. It's a kind of reciprocal arrangement. Anyway, worked out that the quarry that I got the marble from, I got on very well with them, and they said, well, why don't you come over and carve it here? We'll help you with it. So I did that. Went over. I designed it so that I would have 3 spots. So I was there at the beginning when the original block was sawn, and I sort of drew it out. Then I went there, and I instructed the stonemasons, and sort of did some carving on it. And I said to the Italian stonemasons, "This is the kind of thing I'm looking for." And then I went back halfway stage and did another bit.
Yeah.
And then right at the end, I did some bits of finishing. I said, "This is the kind of quality and depth, roundness, and so on that I want." So effectively, I was working with a team of Italian stonemasons, and they are
that's incredible. And marble is a product that they love.
It is. It's the best marble on the planet.
Yes.
That's
just as we have the best granite on the planet.
Exactly.
So, you know, I think we compete with them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much the space that the sculptor was going to go that was speaking to you, or even the person, but almost on a different level, you had almost kind of realised something or interpreted something that actually enabled you to create that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. There was this, that's why I find it kind of difficult to know what agency, what it was that had me standing in the middle of a Georgian sitting room doing this, that then translates down the tubes into this 14-foot long. Effectively, it's a sculpture. It's not a boat. I mean, I used the word boat. It's not a boat. It's got the DNA of boatness about it. It's got a kind of genetic relationship to a boat, but it's a sculpture. It's not meant to be sailed in. It's not meant to have people. But when you look at it, you feel something that you feel when you look at a boat. But it's a sculpture.
Yeah.
And in effect, that is absolutely the perfect response to the poem and to the client's aspirations for this piece.
And it feels like it has movement.
It really does.
Which I got from that. Well, the images are amazing. But whilst we're on the book, can I just ask you another? Because one of the things I loved in here was the people that you've sculpted. So there's a father and son embracing.
Yeah.
And there's a mother and baby. I love that. I mean, there's a few different ones, but absolutely, well, a father and baby, should I say?
Yeah, yeah.
What? That's very different to what you've just described. Creating that's kind of almost like a boat.
I know.
What took you there?
What happened was, as I said earlier on, I trained and studied as a painter, a draftsman, etcher. So I didn't know it really very much about sculpture. For about 15 years, I was a practicing painter who occasionally made sculptures. When we came to Arran, I had started doing this. I'd already done this font in the cathedral, so that I was beginning to tiptoe into sculpture in a much more serious way, but effectively knew nothing about contemporary sculpture. So I was teaching myself how to make sculptures. So the father and son started out as I don't know if you know the story of St.
Christopher?
Thank you.
St. Christopher, of course.
St. Christopher, yeah.
Yes, it was the very first necklace I ever had, so...
Right, well...
Absolutely.
So
the patron saint of travel.
Patron saint of travel. The reason he was a patron saint of travel, and that's germane to the design of the sculpture, was that he carried people across a river.
He did indeed. And that's the iconic picture.
And that's the iconic picture. And then one day he carried this child, and when he got to the other side of the river, he said, you know, of all the people I've carried across this river, you have been the heaviest. I nearly didn't make it. And the child said, that's because I am the Christ child. You've carried the sins of the world across with you. So that kind of dictated to me that I wanted to create this sculpture that was really full of upper muscular body strength, kind of diminutive towards the legs, but this quite massive. I started carving it and then got so far into the stone, and Christian, our son, he must have been about 9 months, 10 months, and then realised that actually it wasn't about St. Christopher, it was about me and my son. It was a kind of autobiographical thing. Yeah. So that's my relationship to the sculpture. It started out as St. Christopher, but became really about me and my son. And that's why it has that kind of massive upper body strength. It didn't go too well towards the end, sadly. At one point I was carving it. I really love carving fingers and hands. There's a certain something about the sculpture of especially fingernails that I learned from a German wood carver from the sort of, I think, 16th, 17th century called Tilman Riemenschneider. His fingers and hands were beautiful. And I started carving, really looking forward to the toes on this sculpture. She's laughing now. Tick, 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 tick. And then the tick, tick, tick turns to talk, talk, talk. And what's happening inside the stone is you've hit a flaw.
Oh no.
So it's tick, 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 tock, 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 tock. And then suddenly all 10 toes sheared off in a oneer. And I thought, oh bugger, the toes have all sheared off. But being kind of quite resilient and Presbyterian, I sort of soldiered on. I should really have investigated why they fell off. I gave them to my daughter. Well, no, she came out and said, "Can I have the toes, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, go and knock yourself out." So she took them away, stuck them to her bedroom wall, and painted all the toenails different colours. It was fantastic. So finished the carving, and And then the last point of carving sandstone, you get a big block of carborundum the size of half a brick and a big bucket of water, and you start rubbing it for, rubbing it
For Scotland.
rubbing for Scotland. And then it all, and just at that point I saw a line going through the side of the face of the priest. It was you know how thin a cat's hair is? One hair of a cat, if it gets embedded in something, it was that thin, and I hadn't seen it. And I traced it, and it went right the way around the entire sculpture, and of course straight through with the toes.
Oh my goodness.
I hadn't seen it.
And does your daughter still have the toes?
No, we have them.
Yes.
You've got them.
Somewhere we've inherited them.
You could get a good price for those.
Absolutely.
That's a brilliant story. I love it. So if you were, asking you both now, if you were wanting to inspire somebody who was kind of thinking about, going down the art trail, or really felt inside that that's what they'd like to do, what advice would you give them?
Go and do it. And it's like any kind of art, like music, or it's about expressing something.
Yes.
You don't know what it is, but it's very healthy. And if you feel like art is your thing, or go and try it out. You don't know until you try it.
Yes.
And it's about expressing something that you can't say in words.
Yes.
And you, as I said, you don't know what it is. You can't dictate what it is. You have to just let it come out. And give it a go.
Give it a go, like.
And I would say, I suppose, but it's taken maybe a few years. We both agree this. I know this because we talk about it all the time. We talk about art all the time. Is don't make your art for anybody else other than yourself. It's so difficult. It's so difficult not to do that, because the pressures on selling and are so great. Everybody thinks, how do you survive as an artist? I suppose what I'm trying to say is that you have to see what you're making as not a product. It's not a product. It's not a brand. It is a product, of course it is. At the end of the day, it is a product that has to be bought and sold like anything else. But at the kind of burning point of the welding torch, when you're making it, and as much for a painter as for a sculptor, it's like singing as well. When I sing for myself. I know it sounds terribly selfish. It's not meant to. It's just that's how you connect to the most. Would you agree? To the most kind of personal.
It's not really about if it's good or bad.
No, it's not.
You just make it, and other people will decide whether it's good or bad. So you don't have to do that. You can just let that go. Just make it, and then maybe they decide it's bad, but some people do and some people don't. There's so many different people as well. And but if it's true to yourself, then you'll find, I think, but there's no guarantee of anything, that people will recognize it. Recognize something.
We all tap into things that we all hold as a species in common. We all hold the same things. We love, loss, ambition, looks, style, care, concern, hate, anger, peace, everything. So all we're doing is doing exactly the same as everybody else, but we've just been kind of lucky enough, I suppose, to be able to express it in this particular way. And that's why I would absolutely say be true to yourself, because if you start trying to make things for some sort of perceived audience, you're lying to yourself, and you can never make anything as good for a perceived audience as you can for yourself. You will make it at your best if you're making it solely and only for you, and then you send it out, and you hopefully somebody else will recognize those things in common.
They'll see it.
And
I think throughout life, no matter what you're considering doing, be true to yourself and be authentic and genuine in who you are. It's probably a great piece of advice.
It really
no
is.
matter what you want to do.
And the other thing I was going to say was that inspiration doesn't come just for artists. I mean, It comes for people in financial services. It comes from people. It does.
Let's not talk about that.
No. I really firmly believe that inspiration comes to.
It's about.
It is. Yeah. It's not.
Being creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a writer, or
Absolutely.
anything. Yeah. Absolutely. And so it's not all work. And even though I know your passion, and that it probably doesn't feel like work for you both, but what do you do when you're not, making amazing sculptures or doing amazing sort of paintings? What is it that you get up to? Because I'm seeing some instruments around here, and you mentioned earlier about your singing, so tell us a bit more.
Yeah.
Well, I really like anything to do with the garden, and anything to do with nature, really.
Yeah.
So we've got lots of that around here.
You have.
And I like cycling with the bells on
bells.
Arran. So I like that you can just switch off and enjoy again our lovely island.
Yeah. And you're a swimmer. You were doing sea swimming and
yes.
Oh, some art swimming.
Yes, as well, but I'm giving that up now. So it's.
And what about you, Tim? Then, so.
I think I'm quite simple, really. I really, really love making music, singing.
As in writing music?
No, no, sadly no. I don't. I write poetry. I really. That was the other passion. You asked. Singing and playing is really, really important to me. I must drive Josephine absolutely stark staring bonkers. I come in from work, say it over morning coffee, and I'll pick up the guitar and go through a song. Not because it's practicing, just because it nurtures something.
I didn't try hard enough. I didn't try hard enough. The gold we saved in the good times turned to lead when it was rough. Yes, I must admit the rough was pretty tough. No, I didn't try hard enough. Oh.
And I write poetry. I write poetry probably too seriously. I love it. There's something about metaphorical language, or rather the metaphors within language, that I really enjoy. And resonates with the kind of metaphorical language that I use in art, because you're talking about things obliquely. It's very, the kind of art that I don't really like or think is less successful is kind of tub thumping art, or tub thumping poetry, where somebody's ploughing a kind of particular political furrow. Yeah. And I think the way to get the best art infers rather than states.
Okay.
They say show rather than teach rather than show rather than
show rather than teach.
Yeah. And I think for me that's important. With my work, I'm not trying to plough any political furrow. Although I've been incredibly political when I was younger. I think what I'm trying to do is something much more akin to the nature of being human, which I think is the real calling. How do you respond to what it is to be a human, given your 70 years and 10, to the best of your ability? It's not an essay. It's not a political treatise or a diatribe.
That's right, yeah.
It's an inference. The message is coming in subtler ways. And I think that when that happens, that's by far the more interesting way to get things across.
Okay, so big question here. Why did you come to Arran?
My fault, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always your fault.
Of course.
Tim came here as a boy with his parents, because Arran, I believe, has always been a holiday destination for a lot of Scottish people. Mm-hmm. And so he thought this would be a good place. And then we went over to have a look, because I had never been here. So we went over for a wee holiday. And I liked it as well. Yeah. It's lovely.
And because neither of us are kind of we're employed in a kind of orthodox way. We're both sort of self-employed. Mm-hmm. We could really have been anywhere, and we did look. When the house in Lanarkshire was becoming more full of Lego than it was with artworks, we would look elsewhere to see where we could decamp to. But because I had a couple of 2 or 3 jobs, and Aaron, I mean, those people who know Aaron will remember Matt Laird, Dennis Neville, when I was a student, not the pantry. Before that, it was Vic's Kitchen. I used to know Vic in Virginia very well and worked in there. Yeah, I would come over every weekend. You know, I think my first year in Aaron would be about 1964, 65.
Wow, goodness.
And we came every year right the way through to 1981, which is when my mother had to give up her caravan.
Yeah, it's such a great place to be.
Such a great place.
So it's kind of in your DNA, really, isn't it?
I mean, this whole stretch of coastline between Ardluey, which was where we stayed, and Lamlash, I kind of know at the back of my hand, because I was always wandering back and forth along the beach here, being a sultry teenager, going to the discos and
it was fortuitous that you enjoyed it too when you came to visit.
Yes, because and
why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Yes, why wouldn't you? And then we were lucky to find this place as well.
And so if you were, if I were to say to you, you know, where would be your go-to place on Arran? You know, if you had a favourite spot, I mean, you've obviously cycled around the island, you know it very, very well from over the years. Is there 1 or 2 places, if you just wanted to be quiet or to be inspired or to just feel Arran, where would that be?
Difficult to see, really. I think I really like Glen Ashdale, actually.
The falls?
Yes, the falls.
Stunning.
Yes.
Especially after the rain.
Yes. Yes, I think that would be.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, for me, it's the Black Jetty. Well, that's what they call it, the Black Jetty. I think, I might have got this wrong, at the bottom of you go down Ardluey, and there's a public footpath that goes down now between Kilmoley and the other house that was there. And you go down and you get to what I think was the ferry jetty. There's old photographs of big boats. And I used to spend hours, days, just sitting on the jetty, making little bonfires, having barbecues, singing. I used to sit on the Black Jetty and sing and listen to the sound going across, seemingly hitting the Holy Isle and coming back on one of those glass flat calm days where sound just travels. And you know, so that's what I would be.
I suppose it's the combination of the sea is always there and it's ever changing, and you've got the land. Everything comes together in a kind of miniature way.
Ooh, the M word.
No, but that's right. Well, I'm going to go look for this Black Jetty because it sounds incredible. And so, what's next then for you guys? I mean, I have to say though, I know that we met in a car park on a dodgy winter December day.
At a postponed book launch.
Shamelessly selling these
flogging books from the back of my car.
But you know what? It's one of the most beautiful books, and I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing you, but it really is. Have you got any plans for another book?
No, I had no plans for this book actually. This wasn't my doing. This came about purely fortuitously at the end. You know, this exhibition I had in Mayfair last year. Yes. There was a really nice catalogue produced, written, the essay of which was written by a guy called Richard Cork, very, very respected art critic. The catalogue is great. The exhibition happened, it stopped, and I came back up to the island, and within about a month I got a phone call from the publisher, Stephen, and said, I really want to make a book about you. I thought, oh my God. How often does that kind of thing? It's like winning the Mr. Universe. You know, how often do you get invited to lecture at an art school? You know, most people are kind of tripping over themselves to get to the front door first. So I said, yeah, how do we do it? So we did it.
It's amazing.
So I never expected it. It's lovely. It's been a fantastic exercise dealing with the 2 writers. Going back over the photographs, I thought it was going to be a really modelling-inducing exercise. I thought, you know, looking at my past, I thought it'd be really depressing. But actually, it was quite the opposite. I found all gems, and I went through all my old sketchbooks and found all these gems and thought, God, I've done so much.
And you with lots of hair in there
and
as well. Yes, so that's a very, very good show. And of course, you've taken some of the photographs for the book as well.
Yes.
Which is great.
But yeah.
Maybe photography might be your next thing?
No.
No? Just a test.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to sort of double my efforts to make more paintings.
Great.
Yeah. I'm really getting into it.
Josephine had a really successful exhibition not that long ago in a
But in the-
Compass Gallery in
yes.
Glasgow, a very respected gallery.
Yeah, which it was a great exhibition,
Yeah.
but it kind of didn't inspire me then to start making lots more. But now I feel I want to do that. So yeah,
Yes.
getting back to it.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much for your time and
No,
for
it's
being
been a
so
delight. It's been a
open
real
and
delight.
so interesting and fun to talk to today.
For us too, I think. What do you think?
And I
Yeah.
hope that, you know, your fellow islanders will enjoy this episode of
I
Islanders
hope so
Reveal All.
too.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you've all enjoyed our conversation with Tim and Josephine on Islanders Reveal All. Over the months ahead, Charles Curry and I will be in conversation with other islanders, prepared to let us see what makes them tick. Subscribe to the R&I channel to receive notifications of further episodes. We're grateful to Aaron Online for sponsoring this episode of Islanders Reveal All. The app is really helpful to everyone, showing the opening times of island businesses, as well as providing directions to visitors. If you haven't already, download the free app today. You'll find a link to aarononline.com down below this video. Bye for now.